Hello, everyone. Good evening. So glad you could join us, whoever's out there. On behalf of District 97 and the Oak Park School Board Claim Committee, welcome to our annual Legislators Forum. I'd like to introduce Nancy Ross-Driven, our board member that represents us on claim. Nancy.
Thank you, Luann. I just wanted to take a quick moment on behalf of the board to say thank you to District 97 for once again hosting the Claim Your Voice Legislators Forum. Also, thanks go out to the District 97 Claim Committee for bringing together all of the pieces that make this important annual civic engagement event happen. And finally, I want to say thank you to our esteemed guests for being here tonight and for all of the work you do on behalf of our district and our students. And with that, I will hand it right back to Luann to properly introduce everyone and get the forum started.
Thank you, Nancy. So again, I'm Luann Johannesson. I'm representing the Claim Committee on behalf of the Board of Education of District 97. Again, welcome. We would like to welcome this evening Senate President Don Harmon, Majority Leader Senator Kimberly Lightford, Representative Shawn and Representative Camille Lilly, who have all steadfastly represented Oak Park District 97, all of the community members of Oak Park for many years. I think this is our 9th year doing this. We had hoped to do it in person. Remote works though, we're very happy. Before I introduce our moderator, Jay, I would like to just again, on behalf of Claim, the board, administration, and all of District 97, thank you all for your steadfast work on getting our data sharing bill passed this year. It was a long road for many years, so it is Act number 1020557, which allows Oak Park District 97 and District 90 in River Forest to equally share data with their feeder high school, Oak Park River Forest High School District 200, in a way that K through 12 high schools and school districts do already in the state. I'm happy to say that the Board of Education last night agreed to sign the IGA between District 97 and the high school, and tomorrow night District 200 will as well. So again, thank you to all 4 of you for supporting this. It's going to make immeasurable difference to instruction and the support and the success of our students. So thank you again. Now I'd like to introduce Jay Rowell. He is our vice chair of the Claim Committee, and I think that most of the community know him. Jay is the former deputy treasurer of the state of Illinois, and I will let him take a moment to talk about his new venture that he's working on before we get into questions. And again, thank you all for being here.
Well, thanks, Luann, for that, and nice to be with you all today. I'm sorry you're stuck with me as the moderator rather than the esteemed Charlie Meyerson, who's done this in years past. I've been on a lot of panels over the years, but I don't recall ever moderating before, so I hope you'll be patient with me on all of this. A big thank you to our legislators for attending, and I'd really like to echo what Luann said. Thank you again for all of your support on our data sharing initiative last year, in particular to Senate President Harmon and Representative Lilly for being the lead sponsors of that. And we're really very grateful for you guys taking time out of your busy schedules to join us tonight. And thrilled to be doing this panel at the beginning of this year's General Assembly session, so we can really get a sense from you of what's happening, particularly on what will be impacting education. And now on to the program. So we shared a list of potential questions with the legislators, which I'll go through first, and then we'll move on to questions from the audience after that. So the first question goes to you, Senate President Harmon. As you know, the president recently signed into law an over $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. This bill will bring billions of dollars to Illinois to repair roads and bridges, and we hope here at D97 schools. So our district has specifically requested funding for 9 projects from the General Assembly. One that came out of the conversation at last year's Claim Forum, which was adding gender neutral bathrooms to the schools. And some of the other priorities include library renovations, roof replacement, structural work, and solar panels. So we're hoping that you could commit tonight to help providing some resources for these projects, and then also wanted to see what we could do to support you in those efforts. And then lastly, wanted to get a sense of what you thought the priorities more broadly for the federal infrastructure bill would be, including the potential rebuilding of Interstate 290.
Well, thank you. That's a lot of question there, Jay. Let me try to do my best. We were very grateful that the federal government did pass a massive infrastructure bill. We are still sorting out what goes where. We expect Illinois will get about $17 billion, primarily for transportation projects. We have not gotten all of the rules and guidance from the federal government yet as to what other programs will send money to Illinois via formula, what programs might be competitive where Illinois has to put in applications, what programs are designed for entities other than the state government. Could school districts apply directly? So we're still sorting all that out. The good news is, Illinois has its own infrastructure bill, $40+ billion, much devoted to transportation, but there we clearly have other funds. District 97, I think, should have just received about $250,000 for infrastructure. I know we were aiming for some of the bathroom rehab with that money. And so I certainly commit to including District 97 in the capital conversation in Springfield. We have a terrific Oak Park delegation, and with the partnership of Leader Lightford and Representatives Lilly and Ford, we can all advocate on behalf of District 97 being included again in the capital reappropriation bill. There is an awful lot of opportunity, though, for Illinois, and all of us who have driven on the Eisenhower know that the highway is well past its useful life. It is over 50 years old and has never been completely rebuilt. As painful as that construction project might be, it needs to happen. It's something I've been working on for most of my 20 years in office, and just some of the things I can report. After fighting for many years, we did secure a commitment from the Illinois Department of Transportation, and it is reflected in their plans that the reconstruction remain within the existing ditch so that no more property would need to be taken. I have joked that I was the only child to have nightmares about eminent domain, but my mom, growing up and as a young adult in South Oak Park when they built the highway, terrified me with stories of people coming and knocking on your door to say, we're taking your house to build the highway. So we're going to be able to do it there. We also have commitments to making sure the envelope includes enough room for an extension of the blue line, and are working with CTA to figure out if that's possible and how far. And we're also looking at things like a bike path that would connect the Prairie Trail all the way down to the lake, and much more generous overpasses that would connect Oak Park north of the highway to Oak Park south of the highway, including some green space and safe places to drop off commuters, having been dropped off all too many times on the Oak Park Avenue overpass, trying to jump on the L. We can make that a much more pleasant experience for Oak Parkers traveling west or east.
Great, thank you. And I would throw to the group, any comments on the infrastructure bill or some of the priorities that you're seeking in it?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to the president's message. I don't think anyone on this call is more impacted by the 290 expressway because I live right there. In fact, I hit a train moving now, and the car is moving. So I'm very happy to make sure that we have the ability to make sure that the people on the island where I live have a voice in this conversation. And so we've had these meetings at Columbus Park, and I'm very happy that Senator Don Harmon is leading the charge, and the island won't be forgotten. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so the next question, we're going to talk about moving into the funding formula for schools. And so Representative Ford, I'll start with you on this one. So thank you all for your leadership with the state's evidence-based funding formula, which was enacted in 2017. This was a long time push of D97's claim committee as well. And for all schools in the state to reach the adequacy target, meaning the adequate funding level, it was estimated the state would need to kick in roughly $350 million a year for 10 years. And those increases were budgeted in some of the initial years, but not in 2020 because of COVID. So I think first would love to see, and I'll try not to throw out all three questions at once. Maybe I can spread them around this time, but Do you see the state putting in the additional $350 million this year? And without the graduated income tax, where do you see some of the revenue coming for this over the 10 years?
Jay, that's a great question. I think that's what we should be talking about. I think, and I'm not pandering. I think that we have some strong advocates to make sure that we reach that level on this call. And if we could reach that level every year, we will, because, Senator Lightford, as long as she's there, of course, President Harmon knows that she's going to make sure that it happens. And then we also have Will Davis that has been advanced to the budget team in the House. Therefore, I do believe not only the people on this call as Rep. Lilly and all of us realize that it's important that we reach that level. There's some reality, and we hope that we can always reach that level and actually, surpass the level. I don't care what the level is. It's not enough for the West Side kids in Chicago and the children down in Peoria and other areas across the state. There's no doubt that the reliance on property tax is a problem in the state of Illinois, and we will never, ever have equity in the state of Illinois as long as we try to rely on this formula. But it is a start. And I do believe that with the leaders that you have elected in this village, that we have a better shot at making sure that there's equity. So I'm confident that every time that we're at the table, that we will be advocating for reaching the state's mandate.
Can I add something there, Jane?
Absolutely.
Hi, Jay. Good to see you. And
Nice to
good
see you
evening,
here.
everyone. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me join you tonight. I just want to add some things because 350 million was never the number that we wanted for the evidence-based funding formula. Our goal was 500 million a year. We just have been at a place of 350 million each year. So we're 150 million short in each year of reaching that 10-year goal of 500 million. Each year. Last year in our fiscal year 2022, we were able to appropriate 300 million of new funding, which was again 50 million short of the 350. But considering our COVID crises and all of the challenges that we've had in funding, 300 million was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I want to remind all of us that there was 5 previous grant programs that we combined into one single grant program. And we call that evidence-based funding. That's how it will be distributed based on need. And we created this tier system that has 4 tiers. And we made sure we held harmless all of the school districts from their previous year's funding. So those programs, when you combine general state aid with special education, personnel, special education, standing alone, funding for children requiring special ed services, special ed summer school, and English language learners, like all of that was combined into this one base funding minimum. So our goal is to definitely get that number up. But if there's a timeline, I just don't quite know what it is. We've hoped that every year we did 500 million from 2017, and now we're heading into 2023, and we've not met that threshold yet, but we're pretty committed to education. It's just the reliance that Rep. Ford just mentioned. It's just how we fund our schools, how those revenues are generated. And every time we go at trying to undo the property tax piece is really a big challenge. And so I'm hoping that we can take that challenge on and arrive at a place where we could have some structured funds. And then our lottery system alone, I think there's some ways we can do some things differently. When we began to use lottery funds, we didn't say the monies that we generate would be in addition to. It kind of got grabbled up in what's already there in that whole GRF funding. I think LaShawn and I have done a bill recently to undo that piece. So additional dollars is in addition to, it doesn't become a part of the equation that's already there. So we are working in that space as well. So I just wanted to add that a little bit to the discussion around the funding piece.
Well, great, thank you. And I know it's really been a game changer. We got more support for the schools here in D97 and a lot of rural communities across the state with that huge change in the formula, which had been worked on for years. So I do want to throw it open to anybody else, any of our other legislators, if there's anything they'd like to add on the education funding formula.
Nothing much other than we have been talking continuously, and as demonstrated, we've been doing the work to make education a priority, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Representative. So the next question is on the Whole Child Task Force. And so Senator Lightford, I'll ask you this one. Since you were the lead sponsor of the legislation. So in 2019, the Whole Child Task Force was created for the purpose of establishing an equitable, inclusive, safe, and supportive environment in all schools for every student. And so as the lead sponsor of this, it looks like there's a report that's due out in about 45 days. So we're hoping we get a little sneak peek of what some of the recommendations that might come out of that and some of the legislation that you feel may stem from that as well.
You know, Jay, I'm so glad you brought up the Whole Child report, because this is one of those very exciting pieces of legislation for me, because I know that, you know, we've not identified truly the impacts of trauma on children and their education. And so in anticipation of our report, you know, I wanted to just start out by saying this was a part of the Black Caucus's agenda. And we made sure that, you know, as we worked to answer the call to action that was brought forth by the Black Lives Matter movement, I just wanted to do more. So we created a education pillar for education and workforce development. So it was House Bill 2170. For many of you, if you haven't had a chance to take a look, I would just suggest you do so. It wouldn't be in this year's in 100. Oh yeah, would it be in the 102nd General Assembly, or it may have been at the end of the 101st? Maybe I can find that out to make sure I'm giving you the right information. But we wanted to make sure that there was a opportunity to adjust and promote equity and fairness and opportunity for all marginalized communities that face different impediments to their education. We didn't stop there. We wanted to make sure that healthcare and economic mobility and the right to fair treatment and the criminal justice system were all a part of the pillar system, because they all work in tandem when we talk about communities of color and minority communities and the challenges that are brought about. So as our caucus, we continue to make sure that we provided feedback from experts. We used a lot of data and best practices across these policies. We held a number of public hearings to help inform us for our outcomes. And we went well beyond simply advocating for new legislation, but also reviewing the current laws and rules that were on the books already in government to ensure that they are being enforced and properly implemented. So we found that there was some pieces there that were not being implemented, that had passed both chambers, signed by the governor, but the administration basically never implemented them. So I can't give you all of the particulars of what the report would say, because there's a lot of committed people that are working really hard right now. And I wouldn't want to say more than what I should. But we did create the Whole Child Task Force in the pillar for the purpose of ensuring that every child in Illinois in our schools have access to quality teachers, social workers, school leaders, support personnel, and others who have been trained in this evidence-based intervention and restorative practices. So the task force goals was to create a common definition of trauma responsive schools. That alone, you all took about 3 months for us to just establish these definitions. And once we did, then we began to progress. Our initial deadline was the end of the year in December, but we knew we needed to extend that. And so we've been working really hard to come up with our new deadline that is approaching within the next 4 to 6 weeks. I wanted to mention more of that goal. So trauma responsive schools, that was the definition that we asked. We wanted a trauma responsive district and a trauma responsive community. So all three have very different definitions. And then we wanted to make sure that we outline the training and resources that's required to create and sustain such a system for support for trauma for the schools, the districts, and the communities. And the best way we knew how was to support the legislation by ensuring that each individual school district is actually implementing the legislation requirements. So once we get back those recommendations, we're going to take a really good look at what is being presented and come away with legislation that we believe would be very beneficial. And we took a look at this from preschool all the way through 12th grade. Many people just didn't take note of the impact of trauma on young children, but through our research and data, it was proven that we needed to start as early as 3 years old in preschool. So I'm excited about the whole child report coming. I'm very happy we've gone down this path. And the commissioners are doing an excellent job, and they're from all across the state and in every practicum of a child, from we have practitioners to psychiatrists to healthcare trainers, you name it, they're part of this commission, and they brought in some invaluable information to help us craft what we hope to be really good legislation.
Well, thank you for that. And I know we very much look forward to seeing what the task force comes up with, especially with the district's vision being to create a positive learning environment for all D97 students that's equitable, inclusive, and focused on the whole child. So look forward to learning more about that and what we might be able to do to help advocate for some of that.
Oh, great. And Jay, thank you. And let me just say, you just said your school's vision, and District 97 and Oak Park schools have always been on top of, progressive legislation. And I think that is really crucial because there's still been questions about the way African-American students are not as supported in the Oak Park School District. And I'm hoping that through the whole child report, that the definitions and the suggestions that come forth can help Oak Park school districts identify with perhaps the challenges that apparently are there, considering there's been this challenge with minority students. So hopefully it will be some really good information to help identify and help move the ball as we create this positive learning environment for all students.
Yeah, look forward to seeing what the results are and anything we can do to move the ball forward on that. So want to throw that question out to the group. Is there anything on the whole child task force that anyone would like to add?
The only thing I would add is the early childhood committee that will add to the development of our young people early on, and the funding all of those ideas and working with the families and the teachers and the clinical people to make sure our children has a good early start to education. And I do sit on that commission.
All right. Great, thank you. So then the next question is for you, Representative Lilly, to start. As you know, the state of Illinois already requires numerous vaccines for students to be allowed to attend public schools. So has there been any discussion on adding COVID-19 vaccines to the list of mandatory vaccines? And do you think there'll be any legislation on this session?
There's been all kinds of discussion of how to deal with the pandemic, and no decisions have been made on which direction to go, other than keeping our children safe in the school setting, keeping the staff, the teachers safe in the school setting so they can teach our young minds. The direction of public health that you've been hearing from the director and the governor is to make sure that all of these numbers are trending down. So we are practicing safe habits, well, we say the normal, in schools and in homes as well. The challenge is families are dealing with the contraction over and over again, which is causing a concern for the learnings. So I think as we continue to talk about this issue with families or parents and the school, we can get the best decisions for our children. I'm so excited about Oak Park. I call her mayor, but Vicky is at that table to make sure that we are addressing the concerns of the parents and the health and wellness of the students. And what we're doing is she's bringing that information to us legislators. Don and I, we've sat in a number of those roundtables to talk to the parents how to best move forward with the implementation of vaccines, of immunizations, if you will, all the immunizations, because this is not an early conversation. We've had this conversation about immunizations all along, but what is the best way to move forward for the students here in Oak Park or D97? So I'm very eager to have more of those conversations, but to keep what's the key is, and most important, is to keep our children safe and our teachers safe as they're teaching. So we may use some more at some time to time, the virtual learning, the in-person learning, or e-learning is what they call it. Some of that is always on the table to be utilized, but what's most important is to keep them safe and keep their minds generated. What I did hear is more needs for some of the social emotional needs for our young people. So I think we're going to bring those services forward in school and at home, or have access to in the community, where the children can talk about their experience and feel comfortable with their educational new world, but also feeling safe. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Well, I saw a couple of people go off mute, so I don't know if anybody else has anything to add on that.
Yeah, I think that we should let Representative Lilly, really is critical. She said, new world. You should really say what that means, because that's important.
Well, it's really important that we all understand that the pandemic, and it has caused us to change from a public health perspective, how we do what we do now in our society. And our young people are most affected by it because of their regular, normal education environment. So we're not going to go back to where we were. But what is important is that we work together to determine where we're going forward to, so that they are safe and feel they're in an environment that they can learn, and that we are being concerned about what their thoughts are, their health. And I think that is the new normal. We're taking into account our young people and what they're experiencing.
All right, thanks. So the next question is, and I guess we can just go around here on what is your top legislative priority for this session? So I'll start off with you, Senate President.
And I'm going to take the liberty of getting back to the last question here. I want to tell folks at this point, there is no serious conversation about mandating a vaccine for school attendance. While the vaccine does appear to be safe and effective for children, the vaccines authorized for school-age children are still under emergency use authorization and aren't generally approved. So I just don't see a conversation about mandating vaccines, at least until we've crossed that threshold. As far as legislative priorities for this session, my first, second, and third priorities are to pass another responsible, balanced budget. We really have gone to great lengths to put the state's fiscal house in order. We are paying our bills on time. Frankly, we're paying them earlier than might be counseled by business practices, about 15 days from final approval to checks going out the door. We've never seen a payment cycle like that before. We were rewarded with rating upgrades from the credit rating agencies the first time in 20 years. Everything else that we want to do in the state is dependent on that foundation of a stable, predictable state budget. So I'm going to remain focused on that and then work with the members of our caucus to try to advance their own individual priorities. But for me, it's making sure we have a strong and predictable state budget.
Well, as the deputy treasurer, when Governor Rounder was in and we ran up a tremendous backlog, we were constantly triaging funds. So I really appreciate the efforts that the legislature has made to really, and the governor to bring our fiscal house back into order. An excellent priority based off of my previous experience. So Leader Lightford, I would put the question to you. What's your top legislative priority this session?
Thank you. Well, first, my top priority would be to support the president's first, second, and third priority of balancing the budget. But in addition to that, you all know I love education and youth development. And in our pillar that I mentioned a short while ago, the Education and Workforce Development pillar, in addition to the Whole Child Task Force being created, we also created the Inclusive History, Inclusive American History. Representative Ford had been working on that piece and it became a part of our pillar system. And I'm still serving on that commission as well. We're coming to a close on recommendations lined up with the Whole Child Task Force. So we should have some of that at the end of next month. So it's important that all history for all people is taught and that we have a clear understanding of who we are as a full society. So working on that extensively. Also created the Workforce Development and Training Commission because, I'm looking to consolidate our workforce development programs. We received quite a bit of money from the federal government for the WIA programs. The state's investment is very slim compared to the federal government. And what I learned is that it's just money all over the place, different agencies, none of them have collaborations. None of their systems speak to one another. It's just been a total waste. No one's getting the help that they need. And I originally started out thinking this for young unemployed people, especially in urban areas where the unemployment rate is so high for young African-American males. But I've come to learn working in this commission, it's all walks of life, it's all ages, it's young people, it's people who were forced out of their jobs and closures, and they were headed towards retirement. And so they're quite not there, but now they're a little older, so they're feeling like no one's hiring them because they've reached that over 50 age and they don't have the technology skills, but they knew how to do their job well. So I'm finding that just across the state, in the rural areas, downstate, and collar counties, that it's a huge challenge. And so I'm going to continue to work on consolidating a workforce and development program for the state. And then my third biggest effort, I would think would be around grandparents raising grandchildren. It's been a personal passion of mine. When I found out many years ago from former State Representative Lou Jones, she lost her daughter and became an instant grandmother with 5 children that her daughter left here for her to raise, and she still had her 1 House of Representatives salary. And because she was a grandparent, the state felt it was her responsibility to take her kids in, 5 new grandchildren, and be able to raise them without any supports from the state. And so I checked at our Department of Aging, the line for this program is so small. I don't know who it's helping. And so I want to make sure that we revisit grandparents raising grandchildren, because there are so many grandparents who are retired and they take on raising kids for a second life that's on a fixed income. During COVID, I heard from them more and more. They didn't have the adequate food at home. All of their bills, their electric bill went up, their water bill went up because kids were home all day. They didn't have adequate Wi-Fi. They didn't have laptops for every grandchild. And then some grandparents even called me and just flustered and saying, I cannot help my kid with 5th grade math. I just can't help my grandchild. And so these grandparents need supplemental services, and they need tutoring, they needed laptops, they needed every basic need to take care of a child they needed help with. So that's a huge priority for me this session, and figuring out how we as a state can help grandparents who don't want to lose their grandkids in the system, who don't want to become a foster parent to their grandchild, but want to take their grandchildren in and continue to raise them, but need some supports.
Thank you for that. Those are some excellent priorities. And I know from my past life, when I was the director of the Department of Employment Security at the end of the last recession, I tried very hard to get the different workforce agencies to work together, because there is quite a bit of funding out there, but it's not coordinated, and individuals who desperately need help don't know which door to go through. And
Right.
at the very least the state could do is try to help people and meet them where they are and direct them to the right area. So I applaud you for that work.
Thank you.
Representative Ford, what's your top legislative priority for this session?
Well, my top legislative priority is to find what you call a lobbyist to help me grow hair. So, no, no, I would tell you that I'm gonna be 50 years old, and I'm gonna be 50 in February 28th. And I just want everybody to know that, because it's a big accomplishment, and I'm so happy to say it. And we probably won't be on this Zoom on my birthday, but the reality is we're very lucky to have the president of the Senate from our West Side, and the Senate second in command from the West Side, the speaker from the West Side. So let me just tell you, my priority is to make sure that I support our Democrats that are in leadership, that have been able to work so hard to get in the positions that they're in. So that's my priority, because it benefits us over here on the West Side of Chicago. Violence is a priority of mine. And one of the ways that I think that we could really, really deal with the violence is to make sure that we give opportunities to people. I mean, fairness and opportunities is my priority. There's a lot of stuff that we could do, but if we don't deal with fairness and opportunities for people, then Oak Park is impacted by Austin's shortcomings. And that's been a problem for years. And so my goal is to just continue to advocate for equity in the system. I could talk about a lot of stuff that I want to do and things that we plan to do, but we all know that fairness is the #1 thing that we could advocate for. And so that's my priority.
Thank you, Representative. Agreed. And I think if you just let it grow out a little longer, you got plenty there. So I think you're in good shape. Representative Lilly, I put that question to you. What's your top legislative priority this session? And then we'll turn it over to audience questions from there.
Okay. Well, thank you. Again, supporting my colleagues that really have great vision for people is something I think that makes a difference in our General Assembly and in our communities and in our district. And having a budget, a balanced budget that prioritizes education is awesome. To make sure every citizen have access to health care is a basic essential. While doing that, looking at reforms around nursing home reforms, like long-term care expansion, looking at caregivers acts. It is so critical that we understand health is, if you don't have your health, you don't have much else. And it takes all of us to educate our children and to raise our children in our communities. And with that, we're looking at equity in health, education, and in economics. It is so critical that we all know collectively we can build our communities through community development and business development. So, and that makes our school systems thrive. So with that, I'm excited to be a part of this, I would say this blessing to help communities and to help people. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative, and happy early birthday. I forgot that last time, Representative Ford. So now I'll turn it over to Tom Nowinski, who's the Chief of Staff at the Clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County and a fellow claim member to help take us through some of the audience questions. So thank you all so much for putting up with me as your moderator for the first part, and I'll hand it over to Tom.
Thank you, Jay. And again, thank you to all of you for being here tonight. I will say that I've been monitoring the chat, and there are quite a few individuals who have benefited from and are recipients of tax credit scholarships in Illinois. And they are extremely thankful for those opportunities. They're extremely proud to be able to have those available to them. One of the questions that several of those recipients had was asking about support for some of the legislation that is out there to affect and improve those tax credit scholarships, such as Representative Curtis Tarver's bill. So all of these parents and recipients are proud to benefit from these programs, but they want to know what the support is like for continuing to improve those programs and to provide these benefits in the community. So because it's in they specifically asked about the House bill, I'm going to throw it to Representatives Ford and Lilly first to see any thoughts on those.
Oh, I'll talk about that because it's very important to give children the ability to go to a school of their choice. But I'm also all about fairness. That's what I've been talking about. And when I look at the data, I see that the program was designed with the face of Black people. But when you look at the data doesn't reflect that those are the people that's benefiting from the program. So, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, I got my goddaughter on here tonight. She's been pressuring me, but I know that she's my goddaughter, but I have to educate her on this whole process. And so I just want to let you guys know that I'm all for advancing and expanding this program. But there's no way we could really hit our mark if we're not going to be true. I'm all about hitting the mark. And so if I could continue to push for greatness, please respect me. And so it's not where it could be, and I'll continue to push because that's what we need. Now, if you want someone to just be okay with status quo, then tell me, Representative Ford, just accept what you see and don't push for better. And I'll say, okay, that's not me. Elect someone else. But I'm telling you, if you're true to helping people and improving the lives of people, that's what I'm about. And so this is a good meeting because I want you to know, don't ask me to just support something that you've heard. Please respect me and say, what can we do to make this better? Because no matter what it is, every bill could be better. And so all those people that are interested in passing a bill, if there's a legislator on this call tonight that's not there yet, respect them and say why. Because we have 108 others and 316 other members that's calling us saying that it's not right. So just let's work together. I'm all about working together and respecting all of the people that have positions. I listen to my constituents. And if I didn't listen to my constituents, then I wouldn't be a representative. So there are some things that concern me. And if you respect me and the people that have concerns, then you would say, Representative Ford, how could we get there? And I'll tell you, right now, the bill is, or Tarver's bill is not quite there. Nothing is quite there, nothing is perfect. But just ask me, how could we get there? Don't just say vote for it because we say. That's all I ask for, true respect.
Thank you very much, Representative Ford. Representative Lilly or senators?
I'll just say I commend Representative Curtis Tarver for diving into this space because he's listening to many constituents. He even said he's still working on it. So I'm excited to see us get somewhere with this bill so that we can continue to give families choice, young people choice, and to finish what they start. So he is working on it, and I'm excited to be able to work with him on that.
So let me add something to the conversation as it relates to this issue. I've not seen Representative Tarver's bill, but I'm familiar with the concerns and the issues. You know, that whole piece came about when we were creating the funding model, and that scholarship fell in there like literally in the last, it wasn't even the last hour, I say like the last 2 minutes. And so we've tried to make sure that that scholarship program benefited all students who were in private schools so that they could continue on with a quality education. Through the years, what we've learned through data from the schools themselves, that it wasn't equally spread out. So when we talk about equity and we talk about fairness and we talk about a quality education, the funding sources were not pretty much equally yoked with a lot of schools who had minority students. There was always, if the corporate side, they could select what school they wanted to give the resources to for the scholarships to be created. And just alone in my district in Bellwood, I have a private school called Mecca. And Mecca could not get the support from the corporate schools. So, I mean, from the corporate side of the coin. So then their kids were not getting the scholarships. And so there just needs to be some work done to make sure that all kids in all of these private schools have access, and that is not just heavily in a direction of a certain Lutheran school or a certain Catholic school or a certain institution that's not serving all students. So I support what Representative Ford is saying. Sometimes there's always this big push from constituents because it's personal to you, and I understand that. And I've read what you put in the chat, some of the people saying it's benefiting you. We want it to benefit not only you, but we want it to benefit more families who need assistance and spread that support out and make sure that it's a good, solid program. So there is work that could be done in this space. I'm looking forward to seeing what Representative Tarver can negotiate, and I hope he comes up with something that's really well, so that when it arrives in the Senate, I don't have to ask the president to let me sit on it, you know, for a little bit. So we want to make sure that is something that's good for all minority children.
Can I just respond to the senator? I'm a Catholic person. I went to Catholic schools my whole life. This is so very important. And I'm a Democrat that have been on the record for choice. It's not easy. I believe that children should have the ability to meet their needs. But I do also believe that public policy is driven by personal interests as well. If we're serious about having a system in place to help children, please, let's work together and not just say pass a bill because you see a bill on the table. It may not be ready, but we could pass it. And I'm so committed to not letting that system fail. I'm so into that process that I want to expand it. And that's what I want you guys to know as a Democrat. I think that should expand, but we can't miss the mark. And as a Democrat, I'm not asking my colleagues here to even respond to that, but I do believe that that's a very important program that we have, because I went to a Catholic school and I know the struggle. And I know that children need to have the right to meet their needs. So just please be fair about it all.
I'd like to pick up on the theme that Representative Ford and Leader Lightford raised. I too am a Catholic school graduate and a Catholic school parent. I am acutely aware of the challenges that parents face when making that choice. But Leader Lightford pointed out this program really was added to a much larger bill very much at the last minute. And there are obvious things that we can do to improve it. I just want to give one example. This is a $100 million tax credit program. That means $100 million is diverted from our general revenue fund that could be used for public education. Now, for whatever reason, some fit of concern that people would game the system, we adopted a rule that said donors to this program get the tax credit from the state, but they can't deduct the contribution from their federal income taxes. That means that we've essentially sent $40 million every year to Washington, D.C. that we could keep here in Illinois and put into public education. We could maintain the program. It's all on the donor side, not on the recipient side. But we should look for ways to maximize resources for public schools, and we could do it without compromising the program. There also is talk about expanding this program to include tuition at trade schools, so that folks who are on a different trajectory have an opportunity to go to a high school where they're going to learn skills that will give them a job in manufacturing or construction and have all the skills for the 21st century. So there are plenty of opportunities to do this better. But I would agree that I think the broad sentiment in the General Assembly is that we have to fix it before we extend it.
All right, thank you very much to all of you for those comments. We've spoken a lot about and focused on the elementary and schools in District 97, but there's a question about the plans to strengthen Illinois higher education opportunities and invest in public universities. Senator Lightford, you are nodding your head, so I'm going to throw it to you to speak a little bit on that first.
Oh, good. I'm so glad, Thomas. I wanted to bring up higher education, and I thought District 97, just stay focused. We're talking about K through 12. But right now we do have a higher education equitable commission that that also came out of this pillar. Oh, Jay, your girl has grown up so much. Look at her. And sorry about that. I love children. And so with this, we're meeting because we're looking to create a funding formula, just as we have for K through 12. What we're learning is we have this huge university system that is very different. If you're attending a student at Chicago State University, which is in the urban area of Chicago, no dormitory settings, things are very different from if you were downstate at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, or you were at Western Illinois University. Shout out to the Leathernecks. If you were in Macomb, Illinois on a campus, and there's daycares on campus that help the students. But when you are maybe here in town at Northeastern, you're a different type of student. So there's challenges within our university system just based on the differences of the types of students, the geographic area, the tuition costs. When we think about Champaign-Urbana, which is our flagship university, there's very significant differences there. They have a foundation that raises a lot of money for them. They have a lot of graduates who donate and give back to the school system. So they have a whole nother level of funding streams that a lot of the other universities may not have. Illinois State doesn't have that, Eastern doesn't have that, Northern doesn't have that as much as Champaign-Urbana does. And so we're right now trying to figure out, how do we get at a need-based system that would allow more access to students, and students transferring in from community college to four-year university without losing credits and without having to take all these prerequisites that they don't get credit for, but they're using their Pell money and they're using their MAP money, and then it's taking them much longer to earn a degree. So I'm so glad the question was asked, because we are definitely working in the higher ed space. We're trying to create a system for us to gain more teachers, considering we have a huge teacher shortage. So we're trying to figure out, what can we do in the higher ed space to turn that dynamic around. And we recognizing that we have a nursing shortage, and maybe this COVID crisis has, really put a spot eye on healthcare and the shortage that we've experienced. And so we're also looking at spaces like that. How can we create more 2+2 programs that transition, and how can we also get our high school students straight into a community college? We found that there was more enrollment at community college level than university level for the past year, or since we've been in the crises that we've been in due to COVID. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of supports at the community college level, as well as our university level. So thank you, whomever asked that question. We're working on higher ed.
Outstanding, great. That obviously it all mixes together. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Just a quick high-level response. We have, for the first time in a long time, in a generation, reversed the trend and are investing more in our colleges and universities. We've also seen a dramatic expansion of the monetary award program, probably the most significant source of funding for first-generation college students. And we created the AIM High program, which is aimed at those families earning just a little bit too much to qualify for the MAP grants, but aren't wealthy enough to pay for college out of pocket. So I'm hoping that these innovations will create a much cleaner pathway to young folks going to college.
Those have been very helpful. I chair higher ed approach, and we hear from families that what the president is saying is critical. So we're aiming to make sure we protect those. What we plan to do in a bipartisan way is, in our appropriation hearings, our goal is to make sure we build up and promote our public universities. There are a lot of things that we could talk about that are not perfect, but we have agreed in the House to make sure that our hearings will be about building up our public universities. There are some things that we could definitely and we will address, but during our appropriation hearings that's coming up starting the second week or in February, look forward to hearing all the good that our public universities have to offer to the state of Illinois. We want to do everything we can to promote our universities and bring our students back to Illinois and still some of the border state students to come to our great institutions.
The only thing that I would add is we see that not every child is entering into our educational system. Population children are here in the state of Illinois. We need to see more Black students and being enrolled and having access, and we need to monitor that. And so we are planning to continue our efforts to get our young people, that give them that opportunity, whether it's community college, whether it's the university level. It is important to see all Illinois and all young people have that opportunity. And if you look at the enrollment, it's been a challenge for our universities and our colleges and city colleges to keep those enrollment numbers with an equity lens. So I'm looking forward to those ideas to help those populations of young people to get that opportunity. It has been a challenge for them.
Great, thank you. Kind of picking up on a sentiment that all of you have mentioned of equity, there was a comment in the chat about thanking for your continued focus on equitable education, but also specifically focusing on support of students who need alternative education services to learn, to dream, and gain the knowledge and skills to meet those dreams. So if any of you wanted to comment on that line of right now, again, Senator Lightford, this, you're smiling and nodding, so I'll start with you.
I can speak to it. The Prp Committee is a panel that was created within the evidence-based funding model to continue to follow up with the progress and to address any concerns that come along the way. And so here's another area that I put in a request of the Prp to take a look at, including alternative schools as a part of the formula. What I recognize is that we tried to get it in some years ago. I have no idea why it didn't make it in there. It was a consensus across the board that we needed to focus on more re-enrolling of high school dropouts and making sure that there was more high school equivalency versus sending kids straight for a GED and then their education just stops at that point. And so we had some subject matter hearing and testimonies from institutions that provide supports to alternative students, and they felt the same thing, like, hey, don't leave us out. We're doing a great work. We're making sure that these young people get that second chance with their education, and we need support from the state. And so we are working on that as well. There's a lot of moving pieces that is happening in the education space overall. I didn't want to tell you I'm doing like 1,000 things, as my priority, but that is also on my plate. It's not my number 1 or 2, but it's all tied in there together for me, all of the education issues. But West 40, I saw that they had added something in the chat, and I've worked with West 40. They're a great institution. I've gone over to see the kids there, and they make me cry every time I go. It's just a beautiful system. And I know Jack Wees at Alternative School Network, and there's a couple more that provide these schools, especially in the Chicago public school spaces. And then outside of that PACE, it's just a list of them that I think could have more supports and become a little more structured. And we are visiting that right now. So hopefully, fingers crossed that we come up with some good suggestions on how to give them that additional funding stream to help make sure we continue to re-enroll high school students and give them that high school equivalency instead of their GED.
Thank you. And anyone else care to comment on that topic?
We have a host of unique students and young people throughout our state. And these types of programs allow those uniqueness to be addressed and given them opportunity to access. And we need to continue to support them as we're discussing today. All our children are wonderful, but they are unique. And we must create programming, or I'm going to say education, that allows them to be them and to feel valued and encouraged. So as stated in what we are doing and how we can expand those, as Senator Lightford mentioned, is important. And I think every family should understand that exists in Illinois. So I encourage those types of innovations and creations to get the education all young people deserve.
Great, thank you. So there was a comment in the chat that was addressing the violence that is plaguing our communities right now. Unfortunately, we see it every day. And the comment was talking about how there, some other reforms that could be done in terms of gun storage. But it actually got me thinking, because I actually was having a discussion with your former colleague, my boss, Clerk Martinez, today about what can be done about what's going on. And we started talking about different educational programs or after school, in school programs to be part of the solution to that. And so I wanted to open it up. I know Representative Ford, you had mentioned that violence is one of your priorities in this session. So I wanted to kind of just spark that conversation about using educational opportunities or providing more opportunities as a tool to combat this issue of violence.
Fairness and opportunity is our best practice. And so, we could talk about trying to fix a system, but if we're not really talking about making sure that everyone has the opportunity that people that are successful have, then we're actually wasting taxpayer dollars, because we're going to spend it on policing, incarceration, and things like that. So if we're serious, all I want to say is that the most important thing that we could do is tell the truth about what we need to do. I've been there 15 years now. It's a long time. And I tell you, I've seen advocates, lobbyists, and people with their special interests continue to make their entrees. But the truth is, it's very simple. Do the right thing. If we do the right thing, everybody will be okay. So I'm not going to give us a long nothing about what we need to do. I think everybody knows, as my mother say, the difference between left and right. Let's do the right thing.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that this time?
If I had a magic bullet myself, or I could give you the answer to how to eradicate, crime, I believe I would have done it a long time ago. I especially didn't like having a gun held in my face on December 21st by the very people that I've worked my entire career to try to provide a better life for. But crime is not just what you see on the surface. Crime is is a part of systemic racism. Crime is a part of 52% of Black people across this country being born in poverty, being born in intergenerational poverty. Years and years and decades of disinvestment in our communities, challenges receiving quality education. There was a reason there was Brown versus the Board of Education. There was a reason that Dr. Martin Luther King was talking about fairness in housing and fairness, you know, in the healthcare system, and fairness in the public education system, and fair, you know, there is a reason for all these things. So when you look at communities that have high crime, it's mainly because they're devastated, they're poor, they're unemployed, they have a low self-esteem, no confidence, no supports. So how do we turn that around? We have to create job opportunities for these young people. We have to make sure that they have mental health supports, because trauma is real in communities where people don't know if they're going to be able to pay their bills to keep a roof over their head, or if they're relying on free and reduced breakfast and lunch to feed their children because they don't have money to buy food. They're living off of income feeding 4 and 5 children on an income that's very low in poverty. You know, I just think about, I was watching this TV show and I looked at the Martha Vineyards, and I saw how people live. And I can tell you the percentage of Black folks owning those homes in Martha Vineyards will probably be less than 1%, or really, really low. So when you're born into wealth, you're born into success, then that's what you live, that's what you know. But when you're born poor and you don't know no way out, your parents were poor, their parents were poor, their parents was poor. What expectation do we really have that we place on people that have nothing to work with? And so for me, violence stems deep. It's just not something that any of us can just say we're going to change tomorrow, unless you want to start investing in these communities. If you want to make sure that they have workforce development, because they're not all college bound. Many of them still would be first generation to go to college. In 2022, they would be first generation to earn a college degree. Where are they working? You know, we became a society where we depended on just labor to give, you know, minority students a job. Labor having behind Black folks. If you look at their apprenticeship percentages, 8% of all of the state laborers right now, only 8% are Black, only 8. So the question is what have we been doing? What have we been doing in low income and poor school districts? What we did, we took out workforce development programs. That's what we did. You know, they were there in the 80s when I was in high school, but you go to these schools now, they don't have workforce development programs in the schools for juniors and seniors to help them gain a career, know what they can be in life, give them some suggestions on what they can do. All of that was removed. So until we address systemic racism, that's when you get rid of violence.
Thank you very much, Leader Lightford. You know, Representative Lilly, did you want to add anything, or?
The only thing that I would add is violence is a public health crisis, and it's a public health issue, and we all have to deal with it. I echo a lot of what my colleagues are saying, but more importantly that I ask that you support the changes to make sure that all Illinoisans have quality of life, and violence affects all of us. And we seek your support as we address quality of life.
You know, on the last formal question, when there was question was about the priorities for the legislative session, you know, you all spoke about supporting each other, supporting the Democratic views in President Harmon and Speaker Welch. And, you know, I saw comments of how many of your constituents are supportive of all of you to do all these things, getting a balanced budget, equitable access to healthcare, and supporting the payments to grandparents, and fairness and equity in addressing all of education and violence. And so knowing that you have these your constituents still here, I'd like to go around to the four of you and ask if what do you want to say to them right now? And President Harmon, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you all for being here tonight, for taking time, and to District 97 for organizing this. I think we could all say we are very lucky to represent a thoughtful and engaged constituency, a constituency that holds progressive values, that is committed to fairness and equity, and one that holds its elected officials accountable. We are better off for these conversations. We are better off for you knowing what we're doing in Springfield and being able to ask hard questions. I don't think any of us shy away from answering those, and answering your questions, even if it's not the answer you want to hear, is much better than avoiding it. So I really appreciate the chance to be with you. I look forward to being back in person, but I'm very grateful to represent a community like Oak Park, as well as Austin and Leiden Township and Melrose Park. It's a rich tapestry, and we are all better off when we work together.
Representative Lilly, what do you want to say to your constituents right now?
Thank you all for being engaged. D97, this is your 9th year of bringing people together to be engaged. That's critical. And what we do as legislators is we listen and we support the perspectives that are being brought forth in our area. And we bring them to Springfield to balance the conversation of a very diverse state. And what's the beauty of that? We don't go to Springfield alone. We have our constituents with us. So I will thank you for allowing me the opportunity to represent you. And together, we are better. And I look forward to educating the bright minds of our young people with the input of the parents, the students, and the administrations across D97. So thank you for being here tonight.
Leader Lightford.
First, I start out with thank you, and thank you for the support and believing, in me and my efforts, especially as it relates to education. Oak Park showed me, like in my first 2 years, how dedicated this community was to education. It had to be about 2000, 2001. I don't know if you remember this, Don, but you guys passed this big referendum. A big education referendum. And I was just very excited about that, and did all that I could to bring money to that project. This is when we had Illinois First capital funding. And so, Oak Park has always been very progressive and a leader. And I vibed generally off of what you bring. And I know that the intentions are really good and clear around providing a quality education to all students. And I'm really happy just to be a part of that effort and that push. I would just say, it's not easy being a legislator in 2022. I could tell you that the demands have changed significantly. COVID has brought on a surge of greater need. But I know that you have accessible legislators to you. We work very well together as a team, and great things are in store. We just keep on, chopping away, keep on building on that budget, making sure those resources meet the needs of the community. And I could see us going far into exceeding what needs to be done for Oak Park residents and beyond. So thank you again for having me tonight, and thank you for your support and allowing me to be one of your leaders in the legislature.
Representative Ford.
Well, leave it to me to say goodbye to all of my constituents that are no longer in the 8th district and the 4th senatorial district. The district is more compact, and we are very excited about the fact that I've been able to serve all of the Oak Park residents for all these years. It has been one of the communities that I could tell you that I use as an example of a community that understands the struggles of everyone, a community that understands social justice, civil rights, and you need those white people to be fighting with you. And I really appreciate it. And I often talk about how Oak Park is a diverse group, and I appreciate serving them. And so we are very lucky to have and blessed to have the president, Don Harmon, Senator Lightford, Representative Lilly, and Speaker Welch to be in leadership in Springfield. So continue the work that you do, B97 and Oak Park, to lean on all of your elected officials, because the more you lean, the more you get. I really believe in the democracy that serve the people that actually demand more. The more you demand, the more you get, the more you work for it, the easier it is for us to help. So thank you so very much for tonight. I look forward to seeing you at your door.
Okay, Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you to bring us home.
Well, thank you, Tom, for helping facilitate those questions. Thank you, everyone from the audience who submitted them and took times out of their evenings to be with us tonight. And to our legislators, really appreciate all of your hard work and advocacy and just being so accessible and willing to come out and take the time out to be with us tonight and share what you're working on here. Really look forward to the whole Child Task Force report and what we can learn as a district to be more inclusive. So look forward to following up and discussing that with all of you. And on behalf of the district and the board, I mean, again, I just can't thank you enough for taking the time out and being so accessible, and really appreciate the wonderful answers and learning a lot about what's going on in Springfield this year. So thanks again. And I think we are adjourned. Good night.
Thank you. Have a wonderful
Good night, all.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.